Coding without version control is kind of like playing a video game without ever saving your progress.
I think if there was no saving option, I would probably quit playing video games altogether.
If I'd known about version control when I first started coding, I think it would have collectively saved me like 4 months of work. I definitely lost a lot of homeworks and actual projects. There were times where I literally just started the project all over again. I would just like delete everything. And it sounds silly, but like I didn't know about version control back then.
I actually keep many of my things, personal things, work-related things under version control, because even if I write a book or a blog post, it helps me to see what progress I make every day, because we will also see there's a nice way to track changes. And if you ever have to roll back a change, it is all there.
So how do you actually get started? So if you go to your CLI, you're going to be able to type something called Git. So type Git and press enter. And you're going to be able to see like a help menu that comes up now. So if you don't see this, you're going to have to install Git, right? So depending on what machine you have, an operating system, go to the Git website and install it. So Git is what lets you version control. In a previous lecture, we kind of built a project called course, and in there we had a main.py file. So let's navigate to that folder. So we had cd to developer, open source, and then course, and then ls, and you're going to see main.py. So type in git status here. This is a command for Git to show you what's happening. And if you type git status right now, it's going to say not a Git repository. So you haven't actually created this. So I'm going to clear my terminal, and then I'm going to type git init. This is going to create a repository. So you see here it says initialize empty git repository, and it has the path to it. Now if I do git status, you're going to see that actually says I'm on branch master, there are no commits, and then I have a few untracked files. Don't worry about the branch, we're going to cover that in a different video. But right now, let's just learn how to track files, change them, and then track the modifications to those files. You can do a command called git add, and then specify what file you want to track. So I'm going to say git add main.py. And that's actually going to track this file under version control. So now if I say git status again, I can actually see that I have new file, main.py. Now, remember, I'm using PyCharm, and PyCharm creates a project directory, and it uses .ida. So I actually don't want to track that. So I'm actually not even going to add that file. So that folder is not going to be version controlled. So I'm going to clear this again. And now that I'm tracking the changes, now what I have to do is I have to commit those changes, right? To make sure that it's been version controlled. So I'm going to go ahead and commit. I'm just say git commit, and then -am, and then I'll just add a little message that says initial commit. So now my file has been tracked, and I can do git status, and I can see that there are no more changes. The only thing I see is this IDA folder that's red because I'm actually not tracking it.
If you have a lot of files in your folder and there are a lot of files you don't want to track, for example, certain temporary files or log files that are really just something that are on your computer but are not meant to be part of this version control, you can specify something called a git ignore file. So you would, in a text editor, create a file called .gitignore, and there you can list all the files you don't want to be tracked. And this is incredibly useful if you have, for example, large data sets or a lot of folders containing sensitive data.
Usually for ID projects and these kind of things, you do want to gitignore those. So I'm going to touch .gitignore, and that's going to create a new file called .gitignore. And I'm just going to edit this file real quick. So I'm going to open .gitignore. And if you're curious, the dot in front of a file means it's a hidden file, which means that if I open it in my Finder, it's not going to show up unless you enable it, which is possible. So I type open.gitignore, and then in this case, it opens up a little text editor. And I'm just going to add exactly what's on here, which is .ida / and then I'm going to save it, and that's it. And now I'm going to do git status. And now you see that the IDA is gone because we're no longer tracking it, but the .gitignore is there, and I want to actually track that. So I'm going to say git add, and I'm just going to say dot. So I'm just going to git add dot means add everything that's on here. I don't care how many files there are, you're going to track all of them. So when I say git add, and I do git status again, now I see that I have this new file called .gitignore. Now I'm going to commit that file. Remember, the process is you add what you want to track, you make the changes. When you're satisfied with the changes, you commit those changes. So I'm going to say git commit -am again. And this is a shortcut so you can add the message on there as well. And I'm saying added .gitignore. I'm going to clear because I don't like pollution on my terminal. And then I just do git status. And now I see that there's nothing to commit. Everything is good.
In case you are wondering how Git works under the hood, if you initialize the repository git init, it will create an invisible folder called .git where it keeps track of all the Git-related things. So what's nice about that is it's really not changing up your folder too much. It's just the original folder with a .git subfolder in it. So Git is an incredibly efficient and lightweight tool to track your changes.
You also notice that we had to add a commit message to everything we do. So this is a very important thing to learn. You're not coding for yourself, you're coding for future you and your peers. So commit messages should be extremely clear, very succinct, so that a year from now, when you look back at your code and you see a merge into something, you can say, oh, okay, I understand what the code change was in this particular point in time. Now, let's make a change to our main.py. Again, I'm gonna go back to our IDE or whatever you're using. And from the previous lecture, I had this debug statement here, import PDB. So I'm gonna just delete that because I don't actually want it. And then I'm gonna delete these print statements, right? So that's really it. So I'm gonna save the file, and then I'm gonna go back to our code, and I'm gonna say git status, right? And then that's going to actually show me that I changed something in main.py. Usually you know what you changed, right? So you may not necessarily care about what the changes were. But sometimes you may be looking at someone else's pull request or commit message, and you want to understand what the difference was between the original code and what was changed. So you can use a command called git diff, and you just press that and press enter, and that's going to allow you to walk through all the changes. So the way that we read this is you can go up and down with your arrow, and I can see here that I have some changes, right? So I deleted some code from main.py. I didn't actually add any code. So it's all in red, and the 3 lines that I deleted are showing up here. So I deleted the import PDB, I deleted the print statement, and that's it. So I can actually see what changed. I'm gonna add a line so you can see what happens when I add a line as well. So now we're back to our code, and I'm going to just change, and I'm going to actually print X now. So I'm gonna add a new line. So I deleted 3 lines, and I'm adding a new line. Now if I go back and I do git diff, now I'm gonna see 2 things. At the top, I see everything that I deleted, which is 3 lines. And then I'm going to see the 1 line that I added, which is print X in green. So now I can say 3 things were deleted, 1 thing was added, and I can see exactly what that change was with git diff. Now that we've made the changes, let's go ahead and commit them. So let's go ahead and do that. Git commit -am, and I'm going to say changed print statements. So I've been coding for a while, and this has gotten easier for me over time to just be very succinct. 3-4 words, I can describe generally what I can do on a PR, but it's taking a lot of years to get here. So don't stress if you're trying to come up with the perfect commit message. I don't think it exists.
Also, Git is an incredibly customizable tool. So don't feel like what you see when you first execute Git is the only thing you can do. So there are different ways you can configure your text editor, the way you see the diffs and so forth. So there are many different flavors and many different options. And I bet every one of us is using Git a little bit differently.
In summary, the basic idea is that you can type git init to put a folder under source control. Once you've done that, then you also want to create a .gitignore where you're going to basically ignore the files and folders that you don't want to track. Everything else that you do want to track, go ahead and add it with git add. I usually do git add period and then add those files. And then start working. Make your changes, do whatever you want. And when you're ready to make the commitment, then go ahead and type commit, put a fun message so that you're not mad at yourself later, press commit, and then you're good to go.
as you have seen, Git is an incredibly powerful tool for yourself. It's essentially helping you to become a better, more productive programmer. And in the next video, we will also see how it enables us to work together. And also, if you are feeling like this is a lot of things, or a lot of steps I have to do, I promise you, over time, it becomes so much simpler.